Let me ask you something. Do you remember memorizing phone numbers? Like actually knowing your best friend's number by heart? Do you remember being bored and just sitting with it? If you missed your favorite TV show, that was it. Gone. No rewind. No streaming. No second chances. If you're a Xennial, you didn't just grow up before the internet, you grew up during the exact moment everything changed. And that timing. It shaped you more than you probably realize. Most generations grow up entirely inside one technological reality. Gen X. Mostly analog. Younger Millennials and Gen Z. Fully digital. But Xennials. You lived in both worlds, during the years you were still figuring out who you were. Your teenage years looked nothing like your 20s. In high school, you passed physical notes. Conversations disappeared into thin air. If you were late meeting your friends, you couldn't text "on my way." You just showed up and hoped they were there. That required trust, commitment, patience. Then suddenly, cell phones. Friendster. MySpace. Facebook. In what felt like a blink, you went from having maybe 3 ways to contact someone: home phone, work phone, or showing up at their house, to juggling a dozen messaging apps. And somehow, you just adapted. Here's where it gets psychological. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, adaptability, and complex thinking, continues developing until around age 25. Research published in Nature Neuroscience shows that this region matures well into your 20s. That means when the world flipped from analog to digital, your brain was still wiring itself. You were young enough that learning new technology felt natural, but old enough to remember life before it. That combination is rare. Gen X sometimes approaches tech with skepticism because it arrived after their brains were fully formed. Younger millennials don't remember life without it. But you're kind of bilingual. You can sit in a face-to-face conversation without checking your phone every 30 seconds. But you're also not stressed out by new software updates. You remember what it felt like to be unreachable for hours. And you're also fluent in constant connectivity. That dual exposure shaped your identity in ways that are subtle but powerful. Take privacy, for example. You grew up in a world where embarrassing moments faded. That bad haircut. That awkward breakup. That messy party night. There's no permanent digital record. Your memories could evolve. They could soften. They could turn into stories. That's actually how memory is designed to work. Psychological research on autobiographical memory shows that our brains constantly edit experiences. We keep what matters. We let the rest fade. But when everything is documented and searchable forever, that natural editing process changes. Xennials experience both realities, memory as story, and memory as archive. That changes your relationship with your past. Now let's talk about something people don't connect enough to this. The 2008 financial crisis. Many Xennials entered adulthood right when the economy collapsed. Right when you were supposed to be building stability, things got unstable. And that timing matters. Research shows that financial trauma during early adulthood can leave long-term psychological effects, even after circumstances improve. It shapes how you think about money, risk, security. You might be adaptable because you had to be. But there's also sometimes this quiet thought in the background. What if it all falls apart again? That mix is powerful. You learn to pivot during technological chaos. And you learned caution during economic chaos. That creates a very specific kind of mindset. Culturally, generational conversations usually lump everyone together. Gen X versus Millennials. But if you were born in those in-between years, your experience doesn't fully fit either box. You grew up before helicopter parenting became the norm. Your parents didn't always know where you were, and that was fine. You entertained yourself. You dealt with boredom. You solved problems without Googling everything. But you also stepped into adulthood during the early optimism of the internet, when we thought technology would connect everyone and solve everything. Before we realized it might also create new complications. So now you exist in this weird but fascinating space. Independent, but collaborative. Skeptical, but hopeful. Analog roots, digital fluency. You're comfortable holding contradictions. And that might actually be your defining strength. You're not as nostalgic as Gen X, because you genuinely appreciate modern convenience. But you're also not blindly immersed like younger generations, because you remember what we gave up. You remember patience. You remember presence. You remember what it felt like to sit alone with your thoughts without something constantly competing for your attention. But you also gained access to information, connection, and opportunities your younger self couldn't have imagined. That tension between what was gained and what was lost shaped you. If you're a Xennial, you might sometimes feel like you don't fully belong anywhere. Too young for one crowd. Too old for another. But that in-between position, it's not a flaw. It's perspective. You lived through a massive societal transition during your identity-forming years. And in a world that keeps changing faster every decade, knowing how to adapt without completely losing yourself might be one of the most valuable skills there is. The environment you grew up in doesn't have to be the one you stay in forever. You already proved that. The Xennial experience isn't about being superior. It's about living through a specific moment in history that forced you to learn something the rest of the world is still figuring out. How to evolve, without erasing who you are. If this hit home for you, subscribe to Silent Cortex. And if you want to support deeper psychology content like this, consider becoming a channel member. I've got more videos coming, different topics, same depth. I'll see you in the next one.